Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say. I think it's past noon now. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to beautiful Victoria. We're just outside the legislature on the beautiful territories of the Coast Salish peoples, the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. It is great to be here. My name is Ravi Parmar. I'm British Columbia's Minister of Forests and the MLA for Langford Highlands. Couldn't have asked for a more beautiful day. What a beautiful week. It's great to see so many of my friends from local government, folks that I've met on the ground in their communities right across British Columbia. We've got great representation from the forest sector as well. I want to give a shout out to Chief Ronnie and Minister Art Wilson from Wewekai First Nations. We got some tree planters and John Betts and his team. I know the truck loggers are here as well. I think it's fitting, as we were talking about forestry here in National Forest Week, to be surrounded by incredible leaders that are working their butts off every single day to create a stronger and more prosperous forest sector. You'll also notice standing just beside me and behind me are some familiar faces as well. We've got Lenny Joe from the First Nations Forestry Council and a BCTS task force member, Brian Frankel, District of Vanderhoof Councillor and also a task force member, Joan Atkinson, the Mayor of Mackenzie, Kevin Moutre, the Mayor of Vanderhoof, as well as Nick Arkle from Gorman Brothers. And again, want to thank everyone who took time out of their busy lunch hour to be here. It's just a great representation of what makes forestry so incredibly important here in our province. All of the folks that are joining behind me and those that are here for this announcement really do represent what's great about forestry in British Columbia. Community, innovation, grit, hard work, craftsmanship, passion, and resilience. The people in the forestry sector have worked hard to build it into one of the most well-established in the world. But it is under pressure from all sides. A changing climate, record-setting wildfires, roller coaster lumber prices, and Donald Trump's trade war putting livelihoods at risk. And we just have to look at the 35% duties that exist in our softwood lumber sector to see the impact. I want to praise the resiliency of our forest workers. I know we've got Jeff Daw from PPWC represented here. His workers right across British Columbia have helped build our communities and are working hard. But those are who we are standing with to make sure that we are fighting for their paychecks and fighting for their livelihoods as well. Here in British Columbia, we're proud of our forestry sector. It's why when I was appointed minister, I was given the mandate to look at bold solutions because we knew there was a lot more that could be done. And a review of BC timber sales was top on my list. In January, earlier this year, I launched that review for BCTS to rebuild its social license by attracting investment and building investor confidence. A lot has changed since then. This work is now more important than ever before. It was the first time in 2 decades that BCTS had undergone such an in-depth review, and given the overwhelming response from people inside and outside of BCTS, it was clear that it was long overdue. To carry out this work, I asked 3 people who I knew were dedicated to this sector and who could bring their endless expertise. Lenny Joe, Brian Frankel, and also my friend George Habit, who I met a number of years ago when I was in high school, who unfortunately couldn't be here for today's announcement. I want to thank all these 3 incredible British Columbians for their energy, for their hard work, for agreeing to do this. Absolutely. Give them a round of applause. Brian answered my phone at 9 o'clock at night because I phoned Sarah Story in Fraser Lake and said Brian was going to do this, except I didn't ask Brian to do it yet. But thankfully he agreed. We've received a tremendous response from the people that are gathered here, as well as all British Columbians. Over 300 emails, 50 direct discussions with groups and individuals, 2 virtual sessions, and 106 internal submissions. Combined, nearly 500 recommendations, and they've boiled it down into 54 recommendations. Staff in the ministry have been carefully reviewing the recommendations, and I'm pleased to announce today that the government will now be expanding the mandate of BCTS and looking at the next steps to implement all of the rest of the recommendations put forward in their report. With Trump's economic attacks, increasingly intense wildfire seasons, we need to take bold and decisive action. BC timber sales will set the stage for how our sector can thrive today, tomorrow, and for the next 7 generations to come. Our work is to re-establish the role of public interest and stewardship and within the forest sector. BCTS has the tools needed to scale up and do this work. to build a thriving forest economy and deliver on public values and public interests. And these are a resilient forest ecosystems, strong partnerships with First Nations and communities, and making sure that we are creating a diverse, made in BC wood manufacturing sector and a forest economy that delivers economic opportunities and prosperities far and wide. Since January, we have already initiated several actions towards these cornerstone goals, utilizing the expertise in BCTS to manage stewardship projects, doubling the dedicated fiber supply for value-added wood manufacturing companies to 20% of BCTS forestry licenses. We're making it easier for smaller companies to bid on auctions in groups, auctioning commercial thinning sales that improve forest health by reducing the understory. In fact, the first BCTS sale, commercial thinning, just happened and just sold in the Sunshine Coast a few days ago, allowing trees more space to grow and strengthen against fire and pests. Active long-term forest planning and management is the way to go, increasing the role of fire and planning for reforestation and wildfire risk reduction. First Nations partnerships that support obtaining fair market returns for timber under licenses. I mentioned Chief Ronnie. I know we've got other chiefs here as well. My friend from the same First Nations as well, Chief Lampro, is here as well. Outstanding partners who've been a part of this work for the last number of months and will be for generations ahead. We're taking action to improve the use of logging residuals like branches and tree tops to support sectors like the pulp sector. Expanding the mandate of BCTS is about making sure the forestry sector works for everyone in every community. It is local logs, stronger partnerships, and getting our sales targets up. Today, I can also share the news, very exciting news, that we are also expanding 3 more community forests. We are expanding community forests in Vanderhoof, Fraser Lake, and Fort St. James. I'm meeting with the mayors of these communities and their councillors this week to let them know that I'm expanding their community forests, and we are going to be expanding more community forests as part of my mandate that the Premier has provided to me. Community forests have the power to connect local communities to their forests, generating economic, social, and environmental benefits. These community forest expansions will support local mills by driving their local logs to local facilities and allowing communities to take greater control of their economic resources and their economic futures. I look forward to expanding the community forest program right across British Columbia. We are just getting started. For BC Timber Sales, our work now will be the unshackling of legislative constraints currently preventing BCTS from realizing its enormous potential, including establishing a certainty of fiber flow. The result will unleash a powerful tool with the ability to increase jobs in the contractor community, revitalize forest communities by bringing back local logs to local mills, and expanding our strategic investments into the value-added sector. This review has given us the opportunity to be bold, to plan strategically, to invest wisely, and to be bold and transformative in how we approach the next generation of forest management. Across government, we're building British Columbia into Canada's economic powerhouse. I was recently in Ottawa, meeting with our federal counterparts, fighting for BC's future. British Columbia's forestry sector, that is our auto sector, that is our steel sector, and we worked hard alongside the Premier to demand our fair share and to ask that they invest in our sector just as we have. As a start, we need a long-term softwood lumber deal. We need the U.S. to understand just how much they rely on BC's exports. Folks may have saw a CBC article. Pete Hoekstra, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, just said a few days ago, and I quote, the U.S. may need lumber or building materials from someone other than just the United States. Well, BC is the second largest exporter of softwood lumber in the world, second to Russia. British Columbia or Russia? The United States? You've got a decision to make. By working with our federal counterparts, I think it's a pretty easy decision, but we'll leave it to Trump to make up a call. British Columbia or Russia? By working with our federal counterparts on this, we can make BC an independent economy that stands on its own 2 feet and works better for people. Looking at how to implement the recommendations is an important step in moving forward in the forestry sector, so it works for everyone. Because the review has taught us that the future of our shared forestry sector doesn't lie in the past, it lies in the future. It lies in reimagining the essential linkage between working forests and our forest communities. They are the heart and soul of our work. It's communities and the workers who matter most to me and my team. And as I've traveled our great province and heard loud and clear from those communities and workers, for too long, they've endured the blight to their livelihoods as jobs were shipped off to foreign mills. They watched as logs bypassed their towns, as the mills that once provided good paying jobs for decades emptied out. Enough is enough. We're making this change for them. Today, we continue the path forward by these workers and laid out the future by this work that the BCTS task force has done. We're looking at how to implement the expert recommendations from the task force, but this is just the start. I want to thank them once again for their dedicated public service. I want to thank them for all the work they've been doing over the course of the last number of months. It wasn't a joke. I did call Brian at 9 o'clock. I think I called George at about 10:30 at night, messaged him, and he was great in getting back to me. Lenny, I think I called you at a reasonable time in the day. But I want to thank you for your service. It's a great honor for me to be able to be up here on behalf of the entire Forest Service. So many folks that have been working on this project for the last number of months that are here, that are probably watching virtually. I want to thank them for their work as well. With that, I'll turn it over to Lenny and Brian.
Thank you for the words and to open this day up, Minister. Cook Sham, it is good to be here today in Squashed Shuk Welsh, the name that was given to me by my grandfather. My name is Lenny Joe, and it's an honor to be here today, not only as an Intlakatmuk, but also as a forester, and to have the privilege of serving on the BC Timber Sales Task Force alongside my colleague Brian Frankel and also George Abbott. And I want to start off by saying that we're very hopeful that the work that we've done on this report was done in a good way. This work was not simply about forest policy. It was about people, communities, and the forests that sustain us all. For First Nations, this land is our home. It has been passed on to us through the traditional laws and protocols that we have the responsibility to carry on and pass along to our future generations. Bringing Indigenous voices into the center of forest policy is essential if we are to honor UN DRIP and BC's DRIPA legislation and create a forest economy built on respect and sustainability. What made this report strong was not only the expertise at the table, but the relationships that we built among First Nations, industry, and government, and everyone who contributed their ideas. That trust allowed us to have honest conversations and craft recommendations that reflect everyone's needs while honoring our shared responsibilities to the land. The recommendations we put forward envision a renewed relationship between government, industry, and First Nations. One grounded in collaboration and shared decision-making and long-term stewardship. They also reflect a recognition that BC's forest sector must evolve to meet today's challenges and opportunities. I want to thank Minister Parmar and the province for taking this work seriously and for inviting First Nations to be full partners in shaping the future of forestry. Together, we can build a sector that is not only economically strong, but also a culturally respectful and environmentally responsible sector that's creating sustainable change for our future generations. Cook State, and thank you for being here today to acknowledge this.
Whoa, this automatically goes up. Awesome. My name's Brian Frankel, councillor with the District of Annerhoof. I've been in the forest industry for 40 years. When the Minister of Forest calls you at 9:35 at night, you answer the phone. I never knew what was ahead. For me personally, it was about 120 meetings from people across the province. And on July 15th, when we submitted the report to him, it was an amazing process that we had accomplished and listened to 75 to 100 different organizations, read the submissions. So Lenny did a really good job of saying what the report entails and where we're going with future in BC. As a part of this, I wanted to thank everybody that was a part of the BCTS review. There are 3 individuals with Lenny, George, and myself. But the team behind that helped us along the way was phenomenal. Al, Jennifer, Amanda, Melissa, others. Those are the people that created a team of close to 100 folks that had to filter out some of the crazy ideas that we came up with. But not only to do that, but to look into what organizations across the province were saying. And without that, and without their help, we wouldn't have had the document that we submitted to the minister on July 15th. Lastly, I think they deserve a round of applause. Again, lastly, I just want to thank my home council. Without them, I would not have been able to do my work in my community, which is hectic. And they enabled me to have the freedom to participate in a venture that I never envisioned I would be a part of, but I'm so happy that I was. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lenny, and thank you, Brian, George. What an incredible task force. I'm so very lucky that they agreed to be on this journey with me. And I know, as I've spoken to Lenny, I think we're meeting tomorrow, Lenny, and I know I'm meeting with Vanderhoof. I'm hoping I'll be able to steal more of Brian's time for more projects well into the future as well. Next, I'd like to invite up an incredible mayor, someone who represents her community and holds ministers accountable. I first met Mayor Joan Atkinson of Mackenzie when I visited Mackenzie when I was working for a previous forest minister. She's been an outstanding advocate for her community. And to talk a bit about what the BCTS recommendations mean for her community, gives me great pleasure to welcome up Joan to the podium.
Wow, cool. High tech. Good afternoon, everyone. I feel so incredibly privileged to join with you today. I want to start off by acknowledging and thanking Lenny Joe, Brian Frankel, and George Abbott for their incredible hard work. These 3 independent people that sat on this task force brings a century of knowledge to this topic, this forest industry topic, and what has to be done. We all know our industry is in crisis right across the country, and especially in British Columbia because it is a foundational part of our economy. So I'm very, very excited to see that this document, which I actually have not yet seen or read, but I have full confidence that the task force has done a fabulous job, and I see this as a turning chapter in the forest industry in this province. The recommendations will make a difference, and I also want to thank the Ministry of Forests and Minister Parmar for the timely release of this report. To have that released to the public in just over 2 months is outstanding. So I look forward to continuing working with the Forest Minister and his hardworking staff, and we do have better days ahead. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mayor Atkinson. To talk a bit about what this investment means, not just for BCTS, but in particular for an expansion to their community forests. Gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome up to the podium my friend. The first community I visited when I became Minister of Forests a number of months ago, the Mayor of Vanderhoof, Kevin Moutre.
Just want to take a few minutes to talk about community forests. They really are a unique tool that you can bring innovation practices to the area. In our expansion proposal, what we're looking at is going into the 30, 40-year-old stands, commercially thinning them, reducing the fire risks, creating jobs from that thinning operation, but also supporting the mills that are left running in our area that can handle that small dimension log. So it's a great announcement that we're hearing here today, and we have the tools in our local community to take advantage of that. It is really, would encourage the minister to keep on down this path and really support those community forests. We really need that to get it into the hands of both local governments and First Nations, where those local decisions can be made to the best effect. Thank you.
And last and certainly not least, a few months ago, Nick Arkell showed up in my constituency office in Langford and told me that he was making a substantive investment, $120 million to purchase the Weyerhaeuser facility in Princeton. Nick represents a company, homebred here in British Columbia, that I think very much is the future of forestry. And to talk about what this means for him as a licensee holder, but in particular as a Made in BC company, the impact that these recommendations will have. Please join me in welcoming up Nick Arkell from Gorman Brothers.
Full disclosure, I've worked in this industry for 50 years. I started in 1975. I worked for a family-owned and operated business in the Southern Interior. We have multiple divisions, very much focused on high-value products, working with our communities, working with our First Nations to get the success that we all want. It's an industry I'm passionate about. I want to see it have a great future. It has a great history, legacy, and to see what we can create together going forward is something that really excites me. I'd like to thank Minister Parmar. There's no one that exceeds his passion and drive to see a successful industry than the Minister. I'd also like to thank those that were on the task force. It's no mean task to come up with over 50 recommendations. That represents clearly a lot of work and a lot of thought that has gone into this. But what do I like about the recommendations? Well, first of all, when I was doing full disclosure, the company I work for really focuses on right log to the right mill, and I've tried to educate as many people as possible on this. This is an expression that the industry uses a lot, and I feel we can go so much further than that. Right log to the right mill, at the right time, for the right cost, going into the right product being produced, sold into the right program to maximize the value, to maximize margin. At the end of the day, you always have to have maximized margin in there because that's what pays for our wages, that's what pays our taxes. So it's important we never lose sight of that. British Columbia timber sales has been a huge part of our industry. It has a requirement with regards to the softwood agreement we have with the United States that it has to function well. So number one priority is to make sure it's functioning well. But it also has the ability to do so much more than that. We have an industry that produces a lot of commodity lumber. It's a good job we have an industry that produces a lot of commodity lumber because the world wants those products. But there is so much more we can do. There are certain logs out there that can produce much higher value than commodity priced lumber. I think the BCT timber sales recommendations bring that out. Not only is it about working with our communities, working with our First Nations, making sure there's that even flow of fiber going into the mills, because contrary to some thoughts out there, mills do need logs to run. And it's important we get a stable supply of those. That is not at the expense of good, sound forest management and community input on what that sound management looks like. But we do need a flow of logs. BC Timber sales around 20% of that volume in the province. It is critical that that volume does flow. I see that commitment in those recommendations as well. So from an industry perspective, very self-serving one. It's making sure we manage our lands well, with an all-inclusive kind of input to doing that. We make sure those logs flow, we make sure they're affordable, and we make sure they're going into good products. So therefore, there are incentives for those that are logging those logs to make sure that they help get that lumber to a place that can extract that extra value out of it. I see that in those recommendations as well. So once again, I'd like to thank the Minister, I'd like to thank the task force, and let's all together move towards a better future in the forest industry. Thank you very much.
It is a toasty day here in Victoria, so I will keep it brief as we conclude. For me, forestry is all about people in place. It's about the people of British Columbia. I look back to my travels, the mill sites that I've been on. Dorian from the truck loggers took me out on an old logging road in East Thurlow Island. It's about the people of British Columbia, the jobs and the prosperity. But it's also about place. This is an absolutely beautiful province, and we're working hard as local government leaders, as First Nations, as industry, to steward these lands. It's clear to me, with record wildfire seasons, we have more work to do. We have to steward these lands. We have to be better at forest management, and British Columbia Timber Sales Program is going to lead the way. When I took on this role, I said to the Premier, when I asked for this job, that if there was one thing that I wanted to accomplish, and that was to get forestry on the right path forward. For many people, the path forward is rocky, and many people right now, with the softwood lumber duties and market conditions, the path is uncertain. This work that we're doing today, announcing these recommendations, accepting all of these recommendations, is about building the path forward for forestry, one that ensures that we can create stability, certainty, and predictability for those that work in industry that create jobs, for those workers. Boom and bust are the words to describe forestry in British Columbia the last number of years. Not anymore. We have to build that stability, and that's the work that begins and has begun for the last number of months and continues in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Thanks very much for being here, and I'll turn it over to the team at GCP for any questions from the media.
Thank you, Minister. A reminder to reporters on the line, if you'd like to ask a question, please take yourself off of speakerphone or Bluetooth, then press *1 to enter the queue. We'll start with questions from media attending here outside. You'll be limited to one question and one follow-up. And we will start with Yvonne Raymond, CTV Vancouver Island.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Yesterday, a federal MP and island mayors were here on these steps accusing the province, saying that bad policy is actually hurting this sector. What is your response to their event yesterday?
Well, look, I would say I want to thank those local mayors. I've had a chance to meet with a number of them. I think I'm meeting with the mayor of Campbell River in the next couple of days as well. Really interested in their feedback and perspectives. It's one thing to stand at a podium. It's another thing to sit at a table and come forward with solutions. But I would say here in coastal British Columbia, we face a number of challenges right now. We've got curtailments in place at a number of facilities due to fiber supply challenges, but also to do with market conditions. A number of weeks ago, I announced Forestry Innovation Investment was getting a new CEO, our new board chair, and Rick Doman. Many folks will remember the name Doman because Rick was the CEO of Doman Forest Products that then became Western Forest Products. And I think there's a huge opportunity to leverage Rick's expertise. The coast is too reliant on the United States as a market. It shouldn't be. We're going to be moving forward to open up new market relationships. I'm going to be heading to Japan and South Korea in the future. But I think the forest sector in coastal British Columbia has a very bright future. I'm working on the ground with local nations, in particular the Wewe-Kai First Nations. Chief Ronnie, Art Wilson, a councillor, have been absolutely outstanding. They're moving fiber. There's a number of other nations that are leading the way. I think of the Hawaiian First Nations. Without a doubt, we're facing challenges. We're reviewing what those challenges are. Much of it has to do with pricing. Some of it has to do with export rules and a whole host of other things. But we're at the table working hand in hand, government to government, with First Nations, with industry and other stakeholders to rectify those challenges and provide that stability that workers are looking for.
My follow-up would be, how many of these 54 recommendations that you're announcing today do you think will address some of these outstanding concerns from those communities?
I think many of them will. I think really the recommendations in itself points to a vision for forestry in British Columbia, where we continue to be active in our forest management. I think there is huge potential for British Columbia to be a forestry superpower. We have in the past, but we have to do it in a way that balances stewardship and ensures that First Nations are at the table, part of discussions, and also getting the benefits from it as well. These recommendations took a lot of time and energy to build, but really, from my perspective, they point to the future of forestry, and that is stability, that is certainty, that is predictabilities. It was clear to me when I became Minister of Forests that BCTS sales targets were unacceptable. We've been moving hard to get more sales out. As an example, in the Sunshine Coast, a very difficult area for BCTS to operate in with people's perspectives in regards to forestry practices and harvesting. We were able to move forward with the first commercial thinning sale in the province's history. That's the necessary steps we have to take, not just in the Sunshine Coast, but all across British Columbia. I'm working hand in hand with nations, with community leaders, and I welcome any leaders to stand with me as part of this important work.
Now we're going to go to the phones. Our first question is from Colin Slark from the Prince George Citizen.
Good afternoon, Minister.
Hi, Colin.
I don't know if you saw, but earlier today, Canfor's pulp side of its operations, which operates 3 facilities in Prince George, hit an all-time low stock price. I was wondering what recommendations from the timber sales review do you envision as being helpful to businesses like Canfor that are struggling at the moment?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Colin. Pulp prices have been very low the last number of months. I think maybe sitting at $6.90 last time I checked. But without a doubt, I think there's huge opportunities through the recommendations. The task force spent a lot of time engaging with folks like Joe Nemeth from the Pulp and Paper Task Force Coalition, with Domtar as well as Canfor Pulp and Paper as well, talking about the need to get more fiber to those mills. Moving wildfire salvage logging permits in a quicker way. That is a message that I've heard here at UBCM and in past conversations on the ground. When a fire occurs, we need to move in a quicker and efficient way to get those areas salvaged and those materials to our pulp mill. We see the power of FESBC in terms of what it's been able to do to support pulp mills, but there's a number of steps within the recommendations that we'll be moving on and have already moved on that I believe will be able to help support operators like Canfor and Prince George, as well as those here on the coast. I think of Domtar's facility in Crofton and many more across British Columbia.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do. Given the urgency of the economic situation for a lot of companies in the forestry industry, how will you make sure that these recommendations are implemented in a timely enough fashion for them to do some good?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Colin. When the Premier made me Minister of Forests, one of the first conversations we had after I was sworn in was the importance of forestry. I know that many communities are talking about the importance of mining jobs, about oil and gas, but forestry, as it's been mentioned by my colleagues, is the cornerstone industry in our province, and I believe it is a major project. That's why I was in Ottawa talking about the importance of our forest sector and saying to the Prime Minister and to others that forestry is our auto sector, forestry is our steel sector, and as part of that, the Premier announced a number of months ago 18 major projects. Not too long ago, he made forestry the 19th major project. And I would add, it is the most complicated of those 19 major projects. We're not building a mine. We're not building an LNG facility. We're restoring our land base to get that harvest of 45 million cubic meters that industry has been talking about for the last number of months. That is our focus, and I've got the Premier and my colleagues in Cabinet support to ensure that these recommendations, which don't just impact my ministry, but impact the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, the Ministry of Environment and Parks, Ministry of Jobs, all of government is supporting the work ahead.
Next question comes from Andrew Duffy, Victoria Times columnist.
Minister, you call it a time of change in the industry, and the Mayor of Mackenzie has just called it a time of crisis. Is it both?
Without a doubt, Andrew, when you have mills that are curtailing, when you have livelihoods impacted, it is a crisis. You can use any word to describe it. It's why we have to move quickly. It's why within weeks of becoming minister, I was giving a guy like Brian Frankel a call and saying, hey, put your life on hold for the next 6 months. I need your help. And I'm glad he did. There is so much work that is ongoing, and there will be more work that will be coming forward, not just from these recommendations, but other steps that we're taking to transform forestry. It is clear to me that this is an industry that has had boom and bust. The message that I've gotten loud and clear from workers in mill sites, from workers in the bush, right across British Columbia, is they are looking for stability. That's what I have to deliver. That's the work that we're doing.
Do you have a follow-up, Andrew?
I do, and it sort of touches on a question that was just asked, but I'm not sure it was answered completely. But I'm wondering, how quickly will these recommendations be felt? When will we see real results from this?
I hope folks are seeing some immediate impacts from these recommendations through commercial thinning sales that we're already proceeding on, some conversations that we're having in regards to partnership that is seeing more movement of fiber here in coastal British Columbia, but right throughout this province. There's a number of recommendations that will require legislative change that we'll be exploring in future legislative sessions, but I will be doing my best to move forward on these recommendations and looking to implement them as quickly as we can. As Joan talked about, as others have talked about, we can't wait. We have to transform this sector, and there's no more important time when jobs are on the line and community livelihoods are on the line.
Our next question comes from Nono Shen, the Canadian Press.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. So lots of, like many Canadian companies in BC, they have shut down their sawmills, citing high operating costs as a key reason. I wonder, do you think today's 54 recommendations from the Lumber Review can help reverse the trend, and how? Thank you.
Well, there is a gentleman behind me that just spent $120 million buying a facility. I think it's fair to talk about those that have built companies here in British Columbia and have decided to go and invest those elsewhere. I'll also remind those companies they made billions of dollars in profits in communities like Houston and Mackenzie and right throughout British Columbia, even here in coastal British Columbia. When times were tough, they left. When times were good, they made some money. Nick Arkell and Gorman Brothers are committed to British Columbia. I know there's other companies right across British Columbia that are committed to British Columbia. They're going to be here for the good times. They're going to be here for the tough times. And I'm excited to work with them.
Do you have a follow-up, Nono?
Oh, yes, I do. I wonder, for Minister Palmer, will you consider looking into other foreign markets later this year to sell the BC lumber? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. I'm really excited about the work that we're doing on market development. One of the missions that I had in Ottawa was to get more money. The Prime Minister announced $500 million at Nick's facility a few months ago. We still don't have much of an idea of how they're going to be rolling that out, but I made it known very clear to my counterpart, Tim Hodson, that I expect majority of those dollars come into British Columbia. I talked about this in my remarks. We've got an incredible leader in Rick Doman, who's going to be coming in. I believe over the course of the next number of weeks, we're going to be launching a pretty significant trade mission to Japan and South Korea, but we're also going to be unlocking new potential in new markets. Europe is one that I'm certainly interested in, Australia, continuing to invest in India, as well as China and other places. I know Rick and his team at FII are doing an important work right now to look at where those options are, and we'll be moving very quickly to ensure that resources are put in place to help support expansions of those markets.
And our final question comes from Kendall Hansen, Czech News.
Hi, Minister.
Hi, Kendall.
I know just this past week there was a ship of raw logs that left Nanaimo, and I know raw logs continue to leave our province. Does the review address this, and how does it address raw logs leaving the province?
Yeah, thanks, Kendall. A couple things that I would say. Anytime Nanaimo sees that bunker, that ship leave with raw logs, don't worry, I get lots of those texts, including from some of my colleagues. I'm really proud of the work that our government has done. My predecessor, Premier Horgan, made curtailing raw log exports a number one priority. There was a time when we formed government where over 20% of the logs that were harvested in British Columbia were being sent out as raw logs. Today, it's under 10%. Done a considerable amount of work. We have more work to do, as Nick has talked about, in terms of getting the right log to the right mill. But I would also add there's a really particular recommendation that I think speaks volumes to many people here, local mayors and councillors that have engaged with me, and that is making sure that local logs are supporting local facilities. In 2003, the BC Liberals gutted a pertency in our forest sector. That absolutely destroyed communities. I think it's fair to say, Mayor Atkinson, that destroyed the hope and future for forestry in Mackenzie. I don't know if Mayor Brennan is still here from Houston, but there's another example of a community that was devastated. Port Alberni is another example. And so we are going to be hopefully using some of the recommendations to try to find ways to help support those local logs to local facilities. But my message to Mosaic, to Western Forest Products, to any of those licensee holders is work with us to ensure that we're creating jobs, opportunity, and prosperity. We've had a record amount of dollars invested over the last number of years in the BC Manufacturing Jobs Fund. I announced about $2 million just this past Friday, including about $1 million going to a facility in Chemainus, which I hope will be able to take more value out of the logs that they get, the fiber they get. But I think it was Nick and others that touched on, we are really good at creating commodity lumber here in British Columbia. We have to take it to the next level. We are creating thousands of value-added jobs. We've got more work to do.
Do you have a follow-up, Kendall?
Yeah, last week the mayor of North Cowichan sent you a letter. I don't know if you've had a chance to review it yet, but he had several specific questions on it. I want to ask one of them here. And it was in regard to TFL 644 and 19, which are all TFLs here on Vancouver Island. Just wondering, what are the primary barriers to harvesting timber in these areas?
Yeah, great. Thanks for the question. I had a chance to meet with the mayor and his team from North Cowichan earlier today. We're working hard to get them a written response to those questions. It differs. I would say in some cases it's continuing conversations with local First Nations about forest landscape plans that will have the ability to drive more fiber out of those mills. But in other circumstances, it's just the cost of doing business here in British Columbia. In many cases, I have conversations with people about the cost of delivering those logs to a facility and the price of those logs. And often I get the comparisons to southern United States, to Alberta and other jurisdictions. Well, if you haven't been to Alberta recently, it's flat. If you haven't been to the southern part of the United States, it has one of the lowest labor standards in the entire North America. And so there are some things that we're really proud of here in British Columbia, but I think there are some ways that we can drive those costs down. We're certainly looking at how we can implement integrated resource management plans, which allow broader access to our forests. We're looking at how we can do more commercial thinning and other things that I believe will be able to help make TFL 6, 19, 46, but also all the TFLs. My team in the Ministry of Forests have been working hard all throughout the summer, doing management level unit reviews in every aspect of our land base, working with industry, working with First Nations, working with local governments to make sure we're maximizing those opportunities. At the same time, as we're doing that work, I'm mindful of the fact that one of the reasons why Western Forest Products has curtailed their operations has nothing to do with fiber supply and has everything to do with market conditions. And that's something that I wish was more in my control. But at the same time, we have work to do to expand our markets. We have to continue adding the value chain, and I'm excited to work with companies like Western Forest Products and those across British Columbia to maximize those values, create jobs and prosperities for communities right across coastal British Columbia and all across British Columbia as well.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. That concludes today's event.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for participating in your lunch hour with me. Really appreciate it. Thank you.